I'd like to begin with, on your tables there's a copy, but it's also on the webpage. So I'd like to just show you where you can find the timeline, and that's what I'm going to start with. So if we go to resources and to read, so it's a working document. And why would we put a working document up on the webpage is because this whole process from now until October 2020 is a work in process. The bishops have called this event, which I'll talk a little bit about in a minute, how are we going to engage the whole country? So there's two yellow blocks, one here in October 2020 and the other one in about May 2021, okay? That is the actual dates of the council sessions themselves. What is a plenary council? Let's just begin there. Plenary just means all together, everyone. And then council is the highest form of gathering that the Catholic Church in Australia can have. So by the Catholic Church in Australia, I mean all of the local churches. So the Diocese of Cairns, the Archdiocese of Brisbane, the Archdiocese of Sydney, the Military Ordinariate, the Eastern churches that are in communion with us, the Anglican Ordinariate that is in relationship with the Catholic Church. So we've got 34 local churches across Australia that make up our church in Australia. In the past, the council means the bishops and the hierarchy, so the male clerical ordained hierarchy, yeah? But with this particular council, we're taking a wider approach and all people are invited to be a part of it. In the past, it has only been bishops and hierarchy that have attended, but the council in 2020 will be about 250 delegates, some of which are the bishops and the episcopal vicars and the heads of religious orders that I've talked about before. But then there will also be laity, men and women of the people of God. So some people from the community of the Cairns faithful people will be delegates at the council, and altogether will be about 250 people. What other questions do you have about the nuts and bolts of the council? How are we going to get all of the responses from across Australia and make sure that, one, the responses are all being received and read and heard, and two, giving feedback to all of the people of Australia who are giving responses and saying this is what's being talked about and this is what themes we're coming out with. So that's a great question. The range of diversity, how to include those most vulnerable in our community, and how do we capture all of the answers and make sure we're listening to everybody's voice as well as being able to respond to voices. So if you don't know where to go on the webpage, then you can just click this little button, Have Your Say. Or if you know where to go, you just go to resources and see Have Your Say, Respond Online. This one here is for adults or small groups. So if you have a group of friends in your home or at a cafe or a Lenten group in a parish or whatever it is, just a small group of people, then this is a guide for adults. This one here is been designed by young people and it can be used by teachers in a classroom or just by young people sitting around themselves. So they're both exactly the same process. So in this first stage, what we wanted to do was create an approach that was not a consultation. We didn't have a clear idea that we wanted to put out there and say, what do you think? We didn't have a list of top 10 issues of the church and say, these are what's going to be addressed at Plenary Council, what questions do you have about that? The bishops wanted to create it from where the sense of faith is at from amongst the people of God in Australia. Now, whether your sense of faith is, I'm not sure if I still even believe or not, or whether my sense of faith is I get up every day because of my Catholic faith, wherever you're at on that continuum, then you have an invitation to be able to participate in this process. The other part of this, and why it's not a survey or a consultation, and at the heart of it is a listening and dialogue experience, a conversation between people, is because it's designed to build our community over the next couple of years, not just to wait for the council event in 2020. So on top of all the things that we are doing as the Catholic community in the Diocese of Cairns, this is an opportunity to focus on a particular question and invite people to say, the Catholic Church is having this event in 2020 to make decisions about the future. Right now, you're invited to talk about what you think God is asking of us. And this little 4-step process of listening and dialogue begins and ends with prayer. And in the middle, it invites people to share stories of their experience and questions about their faith. It does not ask you to come to any mediocre consensus. It does not ask you to solve the problems in the dialogue experience. It's to get us back into the habit of being able to disagree with each other. To be able to say, well, I've got this perspective and I've got that perspective, and I really appreciate and trust that you're sharing with me, and try to discover something about God in that.
As you may have heard, Pope Francis has just recently given his formal approval for the Catholic Church in Australia to hold a plenary council in 2020. At the same time, he has accepted the proposal from the Catholic Bishops of Australia that I should take on the role of President of the Plenary Council. I'm very grateful to the bishops and to Pope Francis for appointing me to this important task. I certainly want to add my voice to the voices of so many others in the Church in thanking Pope Francis for this approval. Along with so many others, I look forward to doing all I can to see that the promise of the Plenary Council is realised. We are facing many challenges in the Church in Australia at this time. The calling of the Plenary Council is a sign of hope for us all, and also, I think, a call to action.
Beck, what do you think God is asking of us in Australia at this time?
I think the session that we just had, and when Lana presented to us, it really gave me the opportunity to sit back and reflect on that a bit. Mm-hmm. First of all, I really think we talked about dialogue and God wanting us to listen and to be in dialogue. What I really also think in Australia we need to do is to see what's around us, to see our context, mm-hmm. to see our connections, to see what connections we need to make, and to be brave, and to brave in making those connections. I think in Australia and in lots of countries in the world, we have a lot of communication and not a lot of connection. And I think that that's really what we need to be looking at. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the biggest thing.
As we explore the submission process, I'm wondering how you think you would answer the question, what do you think God is asking of us in Australia at this time?
Well, I came here this afternoon out of curiosity, and I didn't expect to be asked a question, what does God think of Australia? But I think we've got to be aware that God loves each one of us and loves us dearly, and we should reciprocate that love. And I have concerns about, at the moment, I feel that our faith in Australia is not as strong as it was years ago, and I can't blame that on anyone. I think I blame it on the fact that the world has changed so much, and we now have so many things to do and so many conflicting things that are happening in the world that people have perhaps forgotten about faith and the sacraments.
So would you have an experience of your faith or church that you'd like to share?
Well, I had a medical problem 18 months ago that changed me from being a Sunday attendance of Mass to a daily attendance of Mass. Mm. And I believe sincerely that what I've done now has stopped the growth of cancer that I had, and I'm very aware of the fact that I have to thank God for that.
What questions do you think you have about the future of our church that you would like the Plenary Council to consider in 2020?
I suppose we can, because we have a rich heritage, the church has been here for 2,000 years, we have an awful lot to learn from the past. And one of the lessons that we keep learning all the time is that Cardinal Cardine's simple method of see, judge and act, to be sure that we see clearly with the mind and the heart of Christ what the real problem is before we make a decision about action. So yeah, that requires a fair bit of cooperation and prayer. Yeah. And I think that's what this process is all about.